Hi.
How are you?
Long time.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. I just wanted to share something real fast that I completely related to pretty much everything you said, and just wanted to share my experience going in and out of depression or sadness. I used to fight it a lot during that time when I was really going through hard times, and I always felt it in my body more, holding on to wanting this happiness all the time and feeling bad that I didn't have this happiness all the time. Like, it was this weird world. But then when I started meditating and getting into it and just sitting with it, I got very creative. I started painting and I started like letting it out in different ways, which was really nice. And over time to where I am now, I think it's really great to even just have a room full of people in conversation about this, because it is great to just be in that space and let it open up and get wider, because you get a lot out of it if you let that happen instead of fight it. So I just want to say that.
That's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. And what was it about your meditation practice that helped you make that transition?
Well, I think it was definitely recognizing the story of getting inside of like what would trigger me to get into these mind states, and just constantly seeing the same thing happen in my mind, constantly coming up while I was sitting, and just taking it from there, really.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's funny, the tap that you might turn on for sadness is also the tap that you turn on for love and creativity. So they're not, you can't pull them apart. Just interesting. Hi.
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 Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
My question is, I've noticed a lot with my own feelings of depression that the anxiety follows it, not so much having the feeling itself. Like the fear isn't surrounding that, but the ways in which I feel I have to compensate or overcompensate to make up for it around others. For example, I can be on the cushion and drop a storyline and be with those feelings, but the real challenging part comes when I'm at work and those feelings are there and I feel like I have to ignore them in order to perform in the ways that I'm expected to in society.
Yeah.
And I guess that what's the struggle? How would you say you could open yourself up and invite others into your depression without feeling like you're, what's the word? Maybe trying to overwhelm them, or how would you be open with where you are without bringing others down, I guess.
So do you mean like how do you act depressed, and how can you be depressed in front of other people?
Or how can that not be a problem? How can you view it? What perspective can I take so that I don't feel like I have to close the curtain on it, but I can still, be with it?
Right. Well, closing the curtain on it and being with it are not the same. So, we each have to be very skillful. First, with the way we manage our own depression. I don't mean manage in a product efficiency kind of way. I just mean how we relate to it and how we attend to it and how we treat it and how we open to it. We have to be very skillful, which means flexible and adaptable. So as the more you practice, the more readily you can do that on the cushion and off the cushion. But I'd say, in your professional life, you have to be very judicious. The thing that is dangerous is for you to lose track of what's going on inside of yourself. Other people don't have to know, or they can know if you want them to, but it's when you don't know what's going on inside of you that it becomes dangerous. So, but when it comes to your colleagues or your profession, then we have to be judicious. It may not be the right thing to invite them in, or maybe. With our loved ones, again, it's important to be judicious because it can be overwhelming to be with someone who is constantly struggling in the way that you describe and that I also do. So awareness is critical. Awareness of what you're feeling, and then it's your responsibility to relate with it and deal with it. And awareness of the space between you and the other person or people who you may or may not want to invite into it. And then it's a case-by-case, on-the-spot situation. Good luck.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So you made the distinction earlier between depression as kind of a psychiatric diagnosis versus depression as a fluid emotional state. Can you speak a little bit more about that, or how you recognize the difference between the two?
Yeah, it's a good question. Just the distinction between depression and chronic, like debilitating depression. So, there's not a clean edge between those things. But basically, I would say this is, and I'm not a therapist or a doctor, so I don't know really how they would define it. But if you can't function at all, then that's debilitating. Most of us walk around with our depression, and it flares and diminishes and then overwhelms us, and then as long as there's some fluctuation in it, but if you're in a place where you're suicidal or you can't function, then everything I'm saying doesn't apply. You should get help. That's useful.
Hi. Thanks for a wonderful talk.
Oh, thanks.
It's really interesting how you described how, as your practice deepened, you became more in touch, or you started crying a lot more. And I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little more on what the process was like after your teacher told you that some of the best meditators cried a lot. Did the condition get better, or did you cry any less, or was there a light at the end of the tunnel, or is that just an important component of being really in touch with your practice?
The crying is the light at the end of the tunnel, which is strange. So the feeling capacity seems to grow, but the space around it also expands. So it's more like something you can hold on good days. On bad days, you're knocked out by it. But it becomes more a source of strength than something that diminishes you.
Right. I also meant in the context that you thought you might have been doing something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And when you had asked your teacher, why is this not working? Because I shouldn't feel sad.
He said, it is working.
Right.
That's a sign that it is working. So, we're here, I would say, to feel and to be human and to open to that experience without any clue of how it's supposed to look or resolve. And without that, then we're just sort of skating. I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. And I like your manicure.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome.
I found myself putting pieces together from my own experiences as you were talking. I've meditated for a long time and gone through therapy and a lot of seeking and dealt with anxiety and depression. And I also wanted to talk about the crying thing because my own personal experience in the last year and a half or so as my meditation practice has really deepened and become more consistent. I found something similar happening, and it kind of, for me, touched upon what you did in the very beginning, which was I've always found depression and anxiety as this confrontational thing within myself. I have something I feel, but I don't want to feel it, and I'm not going to feel it, so I'm going to do everything I can to not, and it's just... and then once it clicked in that I am basically good, everything around me is basically good, the world is basically good, and I am safe, then I didn't have to confront or be confrontational with it. I could embrace it and feel it. And it was amazing because I had that experience of feeling supported for the first time within myself and allowed to process. And I realized that that's just the release of whatever it is that I'm feeling, and the ability to feel sad at the same time. I've had this weird experiences, especially in the last 6 months, of facing things that feel extremely sad in the moment and then having gratitude for that experience in the exact same time, and it feels a little crazy at moments. But yeah, I really related to that where you were talking about, like in that beginning when you talked about that, and it was an amazing thing because when you talked about that basic goodness, I had that twinge of sadness at the same time, but then I realized how minute it was compared to previously, because it's something I guess I feel like I accept more.
That's great. That's amazing. How did you do that?
Just practice. You know, just learning to just sit. I think I have an amazing therapist for 9 years, and one of the things he's always taught me is that what you talked about, like no feeling is permanent. He said that most times we're scared to process or feel something because it feels like annihilation. Like when you jump down that rabbit hole, when you feel depressed, it's like looking at this abyss and you think that if I go there, I'm dead. Like
never
that's
going to come out.
The fear.
Yeah.
But the realization is when you just let go and embrace it and look, like you said, look at it, observe it, become a part of it and develop a relationship with it, you realize it's not so much an abyss. You know, that there definitely is a side that you go through. You know, you can only cry for so much, and then your body physically has to stop.
That's true. That's all. Thank you. That's awesome. I have some. If you feel like I'm afraid to cry, and it's riffing on what you said, because I'll never stop, and once I step in there, I'm gone. It will eat me up. Here's what I suggest. Look at your watch. Set a timer on your phone or whatever if you have one, and then start feeling sad. Just let it be there. And just let it blossom and swamp you and feel it and cry and do whatever it makes you do. And then when it starts to subside, look at how much time has passed. And I'm not joking. It will be like a minute, maybe 10 or 15 minutes on a really bad situation. And then, so maybe it'll start to subside and then come back again. We'll look at your watch again. And just get a realistic sense of what this really is. It's not falling into an abyss forever. It's actually probably not going to last for more than an hour, the whole thing. So you can do it. You can absolutely do it.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say that was one of the most sincere teachings I've heard, and his comment was also. So you spoke a lot about depression and cases where that's something that people have struggled with for most of their lives. But a lot of what you touched upon also resonates from the perspective of an anxiety. And I know the two are connected, but they're also different.
Mm-hmm, they are.
Can you comment a little bit about your approach or strategy or the commonalities between depression and anxiety?
Yeah. It's a tough one because they really are different, and I appreciate you pointing that out. And depression feels like mud and slow and slushy, and you can't really, even if you wanted to move fast, you couldn't. But anxiety feels like you are moving so fast. It's like someone just put you in the dryer and turned it on, and it's just terrible. So the same basic advice applies, which is feel it, which is so unpleasant and uncomfortable. But get out your watch, and the instruction is always, with one exception that I'm going to mention in a second, turn towards it and allow it and feel it. then you are in the position of power, and it's not overpowering you. But I will say that panic attacks are a different category. And trauma and the anxiety of post-traumatic stress disorder, or that relates to traumas of any kind, and from, we all know what traumas are, that's a different category. And the advice to turn towards it and feel it may not be the right advice. It may be something you would want to do with a great therapist, or with a friend, or with some support that you can really rely on, because trauma is a different category. And as a meditator, I have had many people say to me, well, can't you just meditate when you're having a panic attack? And I'm like, no, I can't. I really can't. It's not possible. Anyway, I have a story I'll tell you at the very end about that, but now we'll go over here and then we'll come back.
Now I just want to hear your panic attack story. Oh, okay. Oh, it's a good one. You're awesome. You're always awesome. It's always great to see you, and it's your bravery. I mean, you always step up there and talk about things that nobody ever wants to talk about, like, broken hearts, depression, sadness, and you're so joyful and great. And enough of the flirting. I actually wanted to talk to you about something that really resonated with me that you said in context of the broken heart aspect of shattered trusts and things that, attachments in that sense. It's feel the feelings and drop the story. Now, I'm not particularly afraid of big feelings, whether they're highs or lows or darks or brights. It's the drop the story part of it. So could you share perhaps some of your experience or what your magic bullets might be in terms of, I'll dig in, I'll get depressed, I'll cry, I'll laugh, I'll do whatever is necessary, and then it's right back to who's to blame, whether it's me or someone else.
Right. So it's the story that's more difficult to deal with than the feelings, in a certain sense. More difficult to deal with? It would be in the sense of feel the feelings, and then I'm on the other side of the feelings, and then right back to the story. Yeah. Some stories are really, really potent and strong.
And particularly in relationship and broken heart. And
agreed, brother. 100%. So here's what I suggest to people with broken hearts, or who have these stories for heartbreak of any kind. And because one of the difficulties with heartbreak is obsessive thinking. And and your mind just wants to go there. There's some kind of a strange comfort in picking the story back up. It's like picking up an old bone or something. It's just picking up your sweats off the floor and putting them on for the 600th day in a row or something. I don't mean, that's not a comment on your outfit. So one thing that I have found helpful, and I've taught this to a fair amount of people now, and I see that it is helpful not just to me, is to go right to the story. Tell it in writing, in the third person. And when I teach this, like on a weekend, we do it in 3 parts. The beginning of the relationship, from the time you met to the time you entered a relationship. And you just start with one sentence and you write between those 2 points, and then the next writing session, you write about the relationship, the time you were in a relationship to the time that you thought, uh-oh. And then you write the final third, which is from uh-oh. And then the final sentence of the story is, that's when he knew the relationship in its current form was over. And there's something very healing about the third person. It's like you take a step back, and you can do this with any story that grips you, and just write it about this person who is you, and see what happens.
When's your next workshop?
I don't know.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
I was thinking about this for a few minutes, but just with what you just said a moment ago, it sort of hit home about not being afraid to feel big feelings and such. And through parts of what you and others have said, I've been sort of sitting here thinking like, well, I'm a musician and I'm an artist, and I can feel anything. And, you know, my father died about 1.5 years ago, and, you know, our whole relationship was problematic and things, and I've thought about it a lot, and I think I'm okay with feeling all those feelings and the abyss that was talked about and things like this. I think I'm basically there, but what I was thinking about was that I think what I need to get through and feel is this depression over things that are kind of mundane, that your creativity isn't being expressed, that you got to do boring stuff every day, that just the things that everyone complains about, and just to give yourself space to. That to me feels like a dry kind of grief. Just don't go there because it's too banal, it's too boring. It's just like everyone worries about that. Get over yourself, kind of thing. So does that make sense? Kind of. It's
I
like,
don't know. Let me see. Are you talking about like there's the deep grief of things like when you lose a parent, and I'm sorry about your loss.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then there's the sort of more kvetchy grief?
Well, it's not exactly kvetches. It's just problems that I've dealt with for many years.
Oh.
Getting your art out there, getting recognition, things like that they don't seem like as good of a story.
Right.
Like if you say, "Oh, I'm depressed because of the death of a loved one," and so on, like that kind of feels beautiful. Like you're like, I'm going to grow through this. But if you're like, "Oh, I'm depressed because of my failures, or because I have to do what everyone else has to do," and I don't know. It's like the willingness to let yourself be depressed over mundane things, and that is sometimes huge. If they bother you for years and years, the mundane things can be just as huge as trauma.
Very huge.
Yes.
And also
problems that just don't go away, things that almost plague you, kind of.
Yeah.
You know.
They're like your weird, grumpy friends. And I'm sure I have them, and we all have them, and most people have them, I think. I'm not trying to say that they're not meaningful and difficult, but all I can tell you is sort of for me, I often walk around feeling like I'm a failure. And I'm not saying that to make fun of myself, because I really feel that way a lot. And now, when I feel that way, I feel that way. But I also sort of have this sense of, oh, it's my old friend who I don't like has come to hang out with me. And the thing that makes my friend really mad is when I say, there's no place for you at this table. But instead, if I sort of say, well, okay, have a seat, and it doesn't feel good, but it's kind of, that's how it is. That's how it is. And I want to recommend a book called Feeding Your Demons by Sultram Alioni, which I could spell for you later if you want, but Feeding Your Demons is sort of a way of relating with these chronic friends. And it's very profound. It's a deep practice that's ancient. It's called Chud, C-H-O-D. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But it's a really profound ancient practice, but it's also very, very applicable and doable. So I recommend that. Yes.
Thanks. Thank you so much for sharing. I related this especially to when you talked about how when we're in a depression, we sort of lose a sense of agency, like willpower to be able to do things, and doing things are very important. But okay, my question, I'm not trying to be controversial, what reason do we have to believe that, or what reason do I have to believe that I'm basically good? Like, there really is no evolutionary basis. The neurocognitive would say that we're some kind of ethical clean slate. I've had a meditation practice for many years, and I've never had that insight of, hey, I and all other beings are basically good. So, like, what am I missing? Like,
I'm so happy you asked that question, because it's really the most important question on Earth. And I can tell you why I think it's true, but I go in and out of knowing it constantly, of knowing this goodness. But it's a very important, it's maybe the most important, Sakyong Mipam says it is the most important question facing you and facing our world. Do we actually believe that we are good or not? And you can't say, I wish the answer was good, so I'm going to choose to believe that. You have to actually do the investigation, and it's not simple. But here's the way I think of it. I think that when you're born, as far as I know, no baby is born going, I wonder if anyone likes me. Or, I wonder if I'm a good enough baby. A baby is born going like this, just reaching. Not from neediness, although babies are needy, obviously, but because that's what's expected. You expect to be embraced, and you expect connection, and you expect love. And then when you don't get it, if you don't, it's traumatic in the extreme, and it's shocking. It's not shocking when you get it, it's just that's how it is. So I always think about that when I'm like, no, people, there's no such thing as basic goodness because there's a lot of basic badness. I think of that, and that the way you're born, and then all...
You can somehow access your worldview at the age of 1.5.
No, I just see that. I don't remember being a baby, but I have seen babies, and that's how they seem to be. But I don't remember being a baby. But that's just my own way of thinking about it. I'm not saying that that's the best way to think about it or a way that would speak to you. But I am saying, please ask the question, and don't be afraid of whatever your answer is.
I think that a lot of the talk will settle in the next few hours as it sort of rings through my head. But I did want to share a part of my recent experience. I recently got introduced to the idea that I might have ADD, and it has really helped me recast some of my chronic experience of anxiety and feelings of being overwhelmed and quite unable to work with certain situations, which is unlike depression in many ways, but is like depression in some. And I felt that my most recent experience trying to be courageous with it and look at it and really pin my experience against all the information that I can gather has been extremely helpful. And also difficult, but it's very much similar.
I believe it. And it must be so difficult to watch your mind when your mind may have attention deficit disorder, because even the ability to pay attention to it is somehow part of the malady. But you can do it. I can see
there
that
are
you can do it.
a lot of new stories that I have sort of that I can collect from other people's experience and other people's journeys that help me when it is difficult to see it happening and when it is quite outside of my sort of conscious experience.
Yeah.
So,
well, I appreciate your willingness to look at it and work with it. And I really believe that your meditation practice will provide the ground for that exploration and also be the path for that exploration and the fruition of the exploration. So I wish you well with it.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I'll just close by saying the first time I had a panic attack, I was on an airplane. And I was suddenly realized that I was extremely claustrophobic. Even now, you won't see me in the elevator. I'm go up and down the stairs because I don't know why. It just happened like 10 years ago. I've flown, I've lived overseas, I've flown all over the world, but suddenly on this one particular flight, I freaked out. And I started to cry. And I saw that as they were about to shut the door, I couldn't do it. I got off the plane. And then I'm like, oh, that was weird. I'll take the next flight. Same thing. I'm like, I have to go. I had to go to Denver for work. I know, I'll get drunk. Because I don't drink that much. It's easy for me to get drunk. And it was my lucky day. I went to the bar in the airport, and they were doubles for the price of singles. I drank a double shot of tequila. Nothing. I drank 3 double shots of tequila, and I was completely sober. Because that's how much adrenaline there was in my system. That's how friggin' afraid I was. Because when you're in that state, you can't get drunk. I don't know why. So I just had a headache and went home. I was, what? And then I got a prescription for like a Valium-like thing. I went back the next day, and that actually was very helpful because it slowed me down enough so that I could see my mind and how it was working. That was very helpful. But I'm on the plane, and I'm still shaking and crying. And the flight attendant says, "Are you okay?" And I say, I'm afraid. Actually, I'm afraid. And I'm not afraid to fly. I'm just afraid of being in a place that I can't get out of. So she says, "Would you like to talk to the captain?" And I'm like, yes. As a matter of fact, I would. And later I was like, she probably wants the captain to determine if I'm crazy and going to be like disrupt the whole flight. Because, you know, the captain has to make that call. So the captain comes out, and he's like king of the captains. He's like pressed and crisp and friendly looking, and he walks over to me. He says, "I hear you're a little afraid to fly." And I say, "Yes." And he says, "My name is Captain Denny Ferguson." I still have back, anyway, I'll tell you that in a second. "My name is Captain Denny Ferguson. I've been a pilot for 25 years. We have a beautiful day for flying. The flight attendant's name is Missy. I promise I'm going to get you there safely." I was like, okay. So the door shuts and we take off, and an hour or so into the flight attendant hands me a business card, and I still have this in my wallet. And it's from the captain. It's his card, and on the back it says, "Dear Susan, I hope your flight is going well. Thank you for your trust in me, Captain Denny." And I was like, I think this may be the best place to be, not the worst place to be. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I learned in that instance that if someone would be kind to me, I could do it. I could calm down. That kindness is the healing balm. And so whenever I've had to fly since then, and now it's much better now, but still, for some years it was really not good, I would say to the person next to me, or in an elevator if I had to go up 30 flights or something, I'm a little claustrophobic. Would you mind talking to me until we take off? And then I promise, you won't have to talk to me anymore. Or until I get to my... And I've said this to tall people, short people, fat people, skinny people, old people, young people, and without exception, they have all, in their own way, said, sure, I'll talk to you. One person just held my hand. A priest read to me from the Bible. Thank you. Most people were like, well, sure, yeah, so, what's your name? Where are you going? Nice weather. They just tried to be chatty, and that always calmed me down. So I just will leave you with that thought that if you struggle with these things and you can find a way to be vulnerable about it and invite kindness, it will restore balance more directly than any other strategy. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next time I'm here. Thank you.